Hello, good evening, because we're doing this towards the evening, 6 o'clock, but good morning or good afternoon, wherever or whenever you're getting this Cross's Corner broadcast. I'm Martin Cross, and with me is the amazing Carsten Brzeski. I say amazing because I just can't believe how across German rowing you are, Karsten.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, thanks for the invitation. Thanks for the
Uh,
compliments. You're British, Crossy, so I know how to read those compliments. But it's a real pleasure to be here.
that's really great. If you are watching this after the event, and I know most of you do, we're actually recording this on the eve of the boat race. So in less than 24 hours, the Oxford and Cambridge crews, men and women, will have come down, and the 2024 boat race prizes will be awarded. How across the boat race is anyone in Germany, or you, Karsten, for that matter?
Well, I must say I lost a little bit touch of the boat race. I was really all over it in the 90s when I was an active rower, and I had a couple of actually good friends starting in the boat race. I see, you know Mark Weber, Tim Woosh.
Yeah.
So that even before that we have had Philip Schuller. So that was, of course, when you had the personal touch, you are really all over it. But it is the opening of the season. So there will be many rowers and rowing interested in Germany watching this boat race, because we also love tradition, we also love history, and we love rowing. So we will clearly be watching.
Yeah, there is one German athlete, Elias Kuhn, who's a junior silver medalist and bronze medalist at the World Championships. He's a big lad, I think. What would it be? 1 meter 90 something. He's about 6'5". Rode at Northeastern, had the best bench press at Northeastern, and Sean Bowden's put him in the 5 seat. So big five man like Jakob Schneider used to be in the German eight.
Yeah, this sounds well. It sounds promising, and probably, as we're going to talk about German rowing later, I think this also shows one of the weaknesses. So that I think there are too few people in German rowing actually following what is happening abroad, what is happening to these juniors or under 23 German rowers who go to the US mainly to study there, and how they develop, and how they end up then in the boat race. So I think this is still one of the untapped potentials that German rowing should use very, very quickly.
Yeah. So I'm guessing it would be unfair to ask you who's going to win for the boat race.
Yeah, I would have to toss a coin, Crossy. So I'll leave this up to you. In all honesty.
Yeah. Well, the omens go dark blue in both contests, but I think the men's will be incredibly close. I think a lot depends on how Elias Kuhn holds the middle of that boat together, like leads the bow four. I think if Cambridge row at the very top of their game, they could overturn Oxford. But, I think their margin, I think Oxford have got a bit more margin. I think Cambridge have to hit it absolutely right. In the women's, I think Oxford have been the stronger, but they've had these crew changes because Lucy Edwards, who was at 7, part of a fantastic stern three combination. She injured. She fell off a bike and injured her chin, and so the coach Alan French has moved her to bow. He's put Sarah Marshall up to the 5 seat. Julia Lindsay's gone up to 7. So I don't know how it will go with that new combination really, but for me they do start as favourites. So yeah. Let's just talk briefly. You mentioned when you used to row in the 90s. I know you're an under 23 medalist. Give us a little brief summary of your rowing career, Karsten.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, because it was also brief. So I started off rowing in West Berlin at that time, and became a lightweight rower. I think always saying that in the early 90s, lightweight rowing in Germany was a bit of a shark basin or a shark tank. So pretty dense, pretty highly populated. and I rode twice for Germany at the under 23 World Championships, which back then were called Nations Cup. One was in lovely Strathclyde with a lovely, not really flat water. so,
Never, yeah.
so there we came in second, won the silver medal against a bunch of Danes who I think in the same year even won gold medal in the lightweight 8 at the senior world championship. So that's okay. And then the year later, clearly better water, better conditions. We were in Greece, in Ioannina, and won the gold medal there. So lightweight 4. So I'm one of these non-existing specie anymore of lightweight sweep rowers. So they have been distinguished by now.
Except in the States, where I've been doing some research because I'm doing a bit of commentary at the IRAs and just seeing these lightweight programs. And there's like 30 guys or 30 women in lightweight programs across, in the women, I think there's about 7 schools that do it. In the men, it's a lot more. It's like lightweight rowing in America's alive and well.
It is, and I must say I love it. Who does not remember fantastic finals at the Olympics or at the Worlds in the Coxless 4, in the lightweight Coxless 4? We had so many great races. So it's a big pity that we no longer have lightweight sweep rowing, and actually that we will get rid of lightweight rowing. In total, but that's a different story. Just to wrap up my brief career. So. I went to the States. So that's nice about Elias because I went briefly to a Northeastern University. Well, you mentioned I was clearly not the best in bench pressing, but apparently I put on too many muscles. So when I came back, I always struggled in ever becoming again a lightweight rower. And this was then more or less a gradual end to my career. And then, rowing to me had always been a social sport because, for my profession, I moved to the Netherlands, I moved to Belgium, and always rowed there. So I always picked it up again, and that was and that's the nice thing about rowing as well. So it's not only about performances and medals; it's also about you're able to do something, and it helps you to integrate in a new environment, in a new society. And now since a couple of years, when kids are older, so my daughter rows, and I coached in the Netherlands in the early 2000s a couple of years, and now I'm a master's rower. So that's my rowing career of the last almost 40 years.
Before we just leave that, I was interested. Where do you keep your gold medal?
In the basement, I have a box. I have a box where I threw in all kind of cups and medals, and
it's not on display.
No, it's not on display. So it's somewhere. It's somewhere down there with all the other medals.
Okay. So you may have explained it, but we obviously we came in contact through mutual friend Mark Weber. Also a master's rower, but then I was looking you up on LinkedIn, and you see you've got this incredibly high-powered job, and I was trying to work out how come this guy, who's this fantastic economist, is doing podcasts on German rowing. Like, why would you be doing that? And it's a successful podcast. So can you sort of enlighten me on that?
Yeah, no, sure. Because somehow, as I said, I've been on and off in the rowing world, but rowing clearly is a passion, and also friendship in rowing is really long lasting. And it was actually that a couple of years ago, an old teammate. So I didn't row with him together because he was a heavyweight sculler, but we lived together in Berliner Ruder Club when we were both active, and he reached out, and just because he saw me on TV, and then we had a chat and took on, and then during the pandemic, well, we were also chatting, and he said, "Yeah, I always wanted to do something about radio or podcasts on rowing." And I said, why don't we just try it?" So I know this platform because I use it for a professional podcast. We have the platform. It works. We don't have to sit together.
Yeah.
So you can be in Berlin, and I can be in Frankfurt, and we just do it. And then we thought, sure, what the hell, we'll just do it. And the idea was, okay, we don't have a script. We don't have a program. We always say we're pretty much opinionated. We have no clue. We pretend at least not to have a clue. And the concept is also that we always try to invite a guest.
Yeah.
And the guest, and that was the funny thing, we were trying to do storytelling. So we were trying to dig out old stories that and Zappel, so the other co-host, he's so much into history and the history of rowing. He knows really everything.
Yeah.
And then we're always kind of sparing a little back and forth. Okay, what are we going to talk about next week or 2 weeks, and who should we invite? And that's how we got started. And in the end, we thought, really, this is just for the two of us. We have no clue whether anyone will ever listen in, and we don't really care. So we're having fun, and we're just listening then to the stories. And we had one of the greatest stories. There's so many great stories. One was we had the last living Olympic medalist from the 1956 Olympics live in the podcast. He was the coxswain of the cox pair of the German cox pair.
Yeah.
And listen, Crossy, he could tell stories in a completely different world. And there are so many. We actually also had Mark Weber on, and we invite the people. We also try to present them. We of course also go a little bit through their biggest successes, but we always try to link it to a certain story. That's I don't know, college rowing in the US.
Yeah.
Boat race. Actually, we did a boat race episode with Tim Voge or Wooch for the Anglo-Saxons, and it's fun. And we somehow, we found a niche. Because, like you said, we don't know the numbers, but I think there are a couple of thousands listening in per episode.
Wow, that's sensational.
Because it's they love it, and the great thing is, we then always also get recommendations about the next guests. So it's really it's a bit like we do it for the rowing crowd in Germany, and the rowing crowd in Germany that listens in, at least also gives us some nice hat tips and ideas of whom we should talk to, and then we pick it up and then get it going. And also, it's so kind of you to call me an expert. The funny thing is now, because I was actively coaching my daughter a couple of years during the lockdowns, and then we also went to regattas in Germany. So that was what kind of completely brought me in also into the high performance rowing in Germany, not only the masters rowing. And the one rower of the German double is a member of my club here in Frankfurt. So you start talking, you start getting in this again, and of course you start analyzing, you start trying to understand what is going on. You look at the performances, you see that there are some tensions, and the podcast also helped, because of course the podcast opened to us fantastic sources. So we all of a sudden really got nice insights in what is going well, what is not going well. Also in kind of how our rowers, how our coaches really looking at things. And even though we so far we tried or we avoid inviting active athletes, because because we don't want them to, I don't know, say stuff that they might regret afterwards. So, but it's and it's fun. And it's a yeah, my kids no longer live at home, so I have time. And and every good personal coach will tell you need some distraction from work. So and what can there be a better distraction than rowing? And and then you do it. There are so many, and that is the fantastic thing. So many rowers, former rowers, are still passionate about the sport. And and that is, I think, and we're now, and also no, we're a small part of it again, and that is fun for us.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the German team. I mean, it'd be interesting if you gave marks out of 10 for performance at last year's World Championships. I don't know who might get. Maybe the Dutch team, who did fantastic, might get 9 or 8 or 9 or something, possibly around that. What would you give the German team?
Well, I think the first question would be if you exclude or include Ollie. I think Ollie.
Right. Well, let's talk Ollie Zeidler then. What is your stance on Ollie Zeidler? Because you're not from South Germany. You're not from Munich, and he doesn't really do the rest of Germany, does he? He does like South Germany. He does Munich.
He does Munich. Well, his at least his father is also not from Munich, so he's more from the region that I'm from. But Ollie Zeidler is an exceptional athlete. He's a great. He really is a great rower. We haven't invited him to the podcast yet. I think that's also on our to-do list. Well, as I said, we don't. There are so much politics in German rowing that I don't. And also last year, and Ollie was vocal in a couple of German media against the rowing, the National Rowing Association, and in our podcast we don't want to push people think that they might regret afterwards. So we still want to keep it friendly, but if Ollie is willing, I think watch the couple there was recently a nice portray of him on a 10 minutes YouTube movie. But he is really he's a fantastic athlete, and the great thing is that despite the disappointment from Tokyo, he came back, and you also see in terms of disappointing European Championship last year, but I think he's still growing. He's still growing as an athlete, as a rower. Sometimes, but that is then not the high performance athlete in me, more the kind of experienced masters rower. I hope for him that at some point he can also find the positive parts of really rowing in a team. Well, and you know what this is, because I think that well, of course, Ollie has now experienced what it is to be an outstanding athlete. Couple of times world champion in the single scull. This is really kind of how much better can it get? Well, not gold medal at the Olympics, but still, this is such a great performance. But the next thing, like I said, and you will probably share these ideas that one is your tangible success, but the other one that you will remember 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later is also the personal contacts, the friendships you made, the teammates you rode with together. So I really hope that maybe after Paris, Ollie will be able to row in a team. But I think that's what I would really wish him as well. So, but the German team, but the rest of the German team, well, what can we get? A 4, a 5. it's simply it's not doing well, Crossy, and you know this. You were there, and I think I even remember some of your commentaries during races that this was so untypical for German rowing, to really not be in A finals, not being part of the crowd that really races for the medals. Normally for the podcast, I don't prepare. For you, I do, because they're I was just, when you look at the numbers and the trend. Here comes the economist in me. The trend is so clear that Germany has. It's not only last year's World Championship that was a disappointment. It is also, we have a longer trend of disappointing performances. So we hardly had any boat in an A final, and this is not an exemption. This is part of the new trend, and I hope that when you keep it on the short term, I hope that we will still get a couple of qualifiers for the Olympics. We have the women's pair, we have the men's pair, we have the women's double. That all still have to qualify, with the men's lightweight double that also has to qualify. And I really hope that we get more qualifiers for Paris. But somehow German rowing has lost contact with the world top, and this is not only the case in rowing. This is it's the case in economics as well. It's the case in other sports as well. And the funny thing is, when you really look at it from a distance, 90s reunification, strong economy due to reunification, but also in rowing. So getting the best together, GDR. West Germany, so really still benefiting from the old system, from all the skills, from all the knowledge. But then, of course, even in the 90s, we saw a couple of really excellent coaches. The UK had one of them going abroad. That's kind of export-oriental business model. And then came the early 2000s, and early 2000s, both economy and also sports and rowing were deteriorating. We then had in the 2010s, we had a bit of a revival, which I think, when you look at rowing, was also due to Hartmut Buschbauer. So we had a big revival of German rowing. I would argue that we were still doing the same things we had done before. So be it in terms of how do we select teams, how is the training performed, what is really the content of the training, the rowing technique. So I would argue we were just optimizing what we knew from the past, but we were not really innovative in rowing. And then, after 2016, I think the downward trend has continued. And when you look at 2021, the Olympics, the lightweight double for a long while was also an individual project. Ollie did not get as far as he had hoped for, but that's also an individual project. And I think when I like to look at the systems, and you mentioned the Dutch. You haven't mentioned Team GB, but when you look at the British, the Dutch, the Kiwis, so there the system seems to be working. The system seems to produce really ongoingly talent and high performances. while in Germany, I think in the last years, the system has started to fail is maybe hard, but at least started to crack. And there are so many reasons. I think money actually matters. Not being innovative anymore, not really opening up for what is happening elsewhere. So this is, and that's the funny thing, and it's really very similar to the economy. So this German arrogance of, hey, we have been the best for such a long while. Why should we change? Why should we learn something from the Irish or the Danish or the Dutch or the British? We'll just continue doing what we have been doing in the past. And at some point in time, the rowers, it's the athletes, so they will perform better. And I think it's only now that, with last year's disappointing performance, that a rethinking has started. But there hasn't been a system change yet. But the rethinking has started. So I hope that if everything goes well this year, so of course Ollie is the strongest candidate for a medal in Paris, but there could be some surprises. Think of the women's quad. Never count out a German men's eight. The men's double could also surprise to the upside. The lightweight double, even though they still have to qualify, I think I saw their ERG scores, looks very good. So there could be some surprise, but then I would hope that if we were to see these surprises, that they will not mask the need for further reforms and structural changes, because the system is currently clearly inferior to what Team GB is doing or to what the Dutch are doing.
Yeah. Well, currently Sabine Schager, I think, she's the eights coach, and she is kind of the overall coordinator. And I know she's a great coach, because I've heard Jason Osborne talk about her. Who got took them to the silver, so close to the O'Donovan and McCarthy in Tokyo for the gold. But I think what I found interesting is that that Christian Felkel, who is probably, he's arguably one of the best, if not the best, technical coach in the world, because he works with the British Four, who are probably the best technical model in the world at the moment. People look at them and go, I'd love to row like that. And he went to Germany for that coordinator's job. And he said, we need to do X, Y, and Z changes. So this is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. And German rowing said, no, we don't want to. So he kind of said, right, well, I don't want the job then. So he's now back with Britain. And the four he coached in 22 and 23, won back-to-back gold medals. So is that the resistance to change you were talking about?
Fun fact. I'm part of Christian's first international success. So, so he was our coach when we won gold in Greece. So
that's crazy. I didn't know that.
So therefore I'm cautious, because I have some insider information.
Okay.
But I think what Christian publicly said is that he is a clear supporter of this idea and the concept Team GB.
Yeah.
Team NL. And that is you really, it's a bit like with the professional soccer. You need to get really the high performance athletes out of the system and give them the most professional support environment that you can, because these athletes are so much more professional than I have ever been during my active time, and probably also than you have ever been. So it's a new sport, and so call this centralization. And the problem in Germany, it's a federal country, so this explains quite a lot. It's a big country, but there has always been the opposition, the resistance against centralization of training, of rowing together.
Yeah.
And Christian and yeah, well, the Dutch are doing the same. They all practice in Amsterdam. So the Brits have their own training center. So Christian, I think, was a clear supporter of this idea, and this idea was not fully carried or supported by the rowing association. And the funny thing is, with our German podcast, we just yesterday did a recording with a former rower of the Deutschland Achter in the late 2010s, and he was
which one?
Max Planer.
Oh, I love Max.
And so, but he was also telling that how he went to Dortmund. Because Dortmund back then, and still is, and that's the center of gravity for rowing in the 8. So the thing is, we do have the centralization in Germany, but only in a few boats, only in a few categories. But that was one thing. The other thing, I think, that was more tangible. I think that the general problem, not only Christian experience, is the resistance, the opposition to change. And that is, you could argue that this is really throughout the entire German economy society. So this is not unique to rowing. Maybe even rowers are more conservative than others. I don't know, but it really probably are. But it's also a cultural thing, and this cultural thing, and what I described, that bit complacency, arrogance, not seeing the need to change, not seeing the need to really do a good analysis of how other strongly performing nations are doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think, and Christian, of course, Christian worked in South Africa. He worked in the UK. So Christian brought in this very international view on things, and I think he felt a little bit like that in this constellation, the reforms that he thought were needed to really bring Germany back to high performance rowing were not possible.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I kind of want to just pivot a little bit to look at the potential matchups in World Cup 1, because we without knowing specifically names and so on, I know the German team are going to be there, which means Ollie Zeidler is going to be there. I know the Dutch team are going to be there, which means Simon van Dorp is going to be there. So we've got a head-to-head between Ollie Zeidler and Van Dorp. I guess the New Zealander Tom McIntosh will be watching from a distance and come in at World Cup 2. But the gold medal is going to be, it looks like, between, maybe, I don't know, Sverre Nielsen or somebody else could come in, but it looks like it's going to be between Ollie, who is the favourite, Van Dorp, who I guess he'll race in Varese at World Cup 1, and Tom McIntosh.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
I hope and I wish that Ollie is going to win in Paris. When I look at the Dutch system, let's really wait for the first World Cup. But if the Dutch did not mess up, and if they really continued their professional approach, and it somehow looks as if you can plan success currently, and that's what the Dutch are doing, I would probably put my money in Paris on Simon van Dorp.
Whoa. That's an interesting call. He's going to be better at sculling, you'd think, because he came to it a bit late. Yeah,
he did sculling before. So I was in Amsterdam now a week ago because I wanted to race the skiff head, which is also a very nice nice race, but it was literally blown off by the wind. But so I was in the club where Simon comes from, Willem III, where they still have a huge picture of Simon, and he was in the Dutch juniors 8 that won gold in Rio. In Rio, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I also remember that on this fantastic Dutch rowing site in El Rui years ago, they showed pictures that there was one boat specially made for Simon, and I think it was extra long, extra wide. So he can scull, and somehow, and that's the whole thing. Somehow. Ollie is special. I think they also have a clear plan. But I have, well, that's gut feeling. My impression is that the Dutch really have the master plan. And then also when you look at last season, Crossy, and you look at, okay, they only showed up very few times. And then they were really, well, except for the for the men's pair, but they were overwhelmingly strong at the Worlds. So it was, the master plan really played out. So if they manage whatever their master plan for this year is, or Caroline, so if they manage to really do the same thing, and they have such a strong men's sculling program. Yeah, I think, as much as I really wish for Ollie to get this gold medal, I put my money on Simon.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the German 8, because it was obviously massive that they beat the USA and grabbed that 5th place to qualify for the Olympics. I thought it was great they were quick out. And generally, I think if you're quick out in 8s, you've got pace somewhere, but they did fade, although, they kept in front of the Americans. Hannes Ocek is, we know, back this year. I guess most of the guys, I assume Hannes is in the 8. I guess most of the guys from the 8 will be back again. I mean, what's their chances of medal? And I guess that they will race in World Cup 1. I'm expecting the British to be in World Cup 1, and I'm expecting the Dutch to be in World Cup 1. So that'll be a great matchup. What are the chances, the German 8's chances of medaling, do you think?
I think when you also last year, when you just looked at the physical skills of most German rowers, they were clearly behind the strong nations. When you look at Eric's scores last year, they were clearly underperforming. So therefore,
do you know what the Erg scores were? Do you know roughly what the average was of the German 8?
Well, last year, I think that's public information. Last year there were, I think, only very few who really made it under 6 flat.
Okay.
Now 2 weeks or a good week ago, there was another kind of test week for the current national team. I don't know what the erg scores of the sweep rowers were, but what I heard is that they I think that it was said that of the entire national team, more than 20 rowers had personal records on the erg. So this sounds as if, at least physically, there is finally this improvement happening. If there is one thing that the German sweep rowers can really do well, it's rowing in the 8. Well, so the pair and the coxswains 4, I think, already for a long while have clearly not been up to standard, but the 8, and even last year's performance at the World Championship, given how they started off the season, was a good performance. So here, and I also think, but I think there are no official nominations yet, but if you browse a little bit on social media, and Hannes is very active on social media, and you look at the details. I think he's posting more and more pictures of himself in the 8. So that would also be my guess that he's back in the 8. I think that's to me the 8 could be one of the surprises. Big and Sabine is, I think, also a very good technical coach. She proved this with the lightweight double. She also proved this the year before with the Coxless 4. Remember, because the German Coxless 4 back then also was pretty strong. And I think she also proved it last year with the 8, making this progress throughout the season. And we last year also in the podcast we had been very critical. So I'm currently trying to see the half glass full and not empty. So I'm still having good hopes that we could see. This is not a boat which will race for gold. I think currently the only boat that Germany has that will race for gold at Paris is Ollie. Full stop. Yeah, and all the others. But I think you also probably covered this. I think you saw that the Aussies are putting everything in the 8 now.
That's exciting.
So I don't think that they will be able to match the British 8 already. But I think that they will start off the season better than last year.
One of the German women. So we talk a little bit about the German women. I know we got the Scullers to talk about. Alex Foster, she got the only German medal in the 2022 Europeans in Munich. I think it was a bronze that she got there. She qualified the boat for the Olympics. She came 8th. She's got a gold medal at Lucerne with that insane sprint that she did. I'm not sure she can compete with Caroline Flein. But can she get in the medals up with Emma Twigg and Tara Rigney?
She's so young, so you would really hope that there is some progress. So there were injuries also last year. So I think that was the first, also a bit of an up and down season. So she won this internal selection or test in the single scull in Germany a couple of weeks ago. So I think she's back in shape. I would be surprised if she really would make, or if she could break into this top 3 group. But I might be a bit biased in favor of the Dutch, also given that I'm married with a Dutch woman, and that I've that I have a Dutch employer. But so I also, Caroline is so fantastic, is so strong, is so determined. This is really the top candidate for gold in Paris. And with Alexandra, I think if she's going to make the final, that would be such a great performance at this age. And then a little bit, and I would also hope for her that she gets experience in a bigger boat after Paris. So also to give her experience in a quad, in a double, to really use this talent in a bigger boat, because there it will be easier to maybe really medal at Worlds or even the LA Olympics.
So it was just 8 years ago that the German women's quad took gold in Rio. The German women's quad qualified. I think they finish 6th last year or
yeah, but they qualified. I think it was 6th or 5th. They qualified at least.
So I know the double didn't qualify. So I guess have German rowing put the top 4 women in the quad. 6th place. So again, where are their chances this year?
When you look at the ERG scores, huge difference between sculling women and sweeping women in Germany. So the
Oh,
sculling
you're
women
kidding,
are really
really?
strong. Yeah. So the sculling women are really strong. So I think that the quad also clearly has some upside potential. And remember also that the German quad in Tokyo would have medaled if it hadn't been for a couple of craps due to the rough water
I
before the
know
finish line.
it was so distracting. I think that was Carlotta
Yeah,
Ndwaje.
yeah,
Yeah, I was sorry not to see her in the team again this year. I know she tried to make it, but
yeah.
yeah,
So,
that
but
was that
I
was
think the quad, the quad there, I'm positive. Like I said, so the women's quad, the men's eight, men's heavyweight and lightweight double. Besides Ollie, are clearly these are the boats to watch where there could be the biggest upward or upside potential. The women's double, I think that was now only put together in all the training camps recently.
yeah.
So this will be quite a challenge to qualify this double still for the Olympics.
Yeah. Men's quad, the German men's quad, of course, they got a double gold in 2012 and
And
2016.
16, yeah,
I know Lawrence Schuf was in both of those boats. We've got Timo Lanaska, who I guess is the big name in the German quad, with people like Finger, Apfel, and Wolf.
yeah.
What are these guys' chance of grabbing a medal?
For them, and I think that is now almost unique for German rowing in recent years that this team could stay together. Yeah, so I think one of the problems of German rowing compared to other nations has also been in recent years that the coaches association, whatever the responsible ones, never gave younger teams some time to develop. And now I think there was also a bit of unrest during the winter on whether they should open up the quad again, and they tried. But I really hope that that this quad now really had some time to develop. Whether what they're also except for Tim Ole, there are two young guys, well, Moritz and Anton.
Mm,
So give them time to grow, give them time to really find together in the quad. So when you look at the performance at the Worlds last year, they making the A final was and therefore qualifying for Paris was a huge success. I think not everyone had expected.
yeah,
In the final, I think they were a bit exhausted, tired, and maybe they even partied a little bit after the qualification. Um, but maybe one or two ranks higher, that could clearly be, and that, because I think this would be, and well, Christian knows it, for example, from the British Coxless Force. So you also need to grow a team. You need to have
yeah,
a team rowing together. This is no longer, and the world has changed. This is no longer you just throw in a couple of guys and the boat runs. So with all the kilometers they made now during in the training camps, there should be some progress. Big thing, as we all know, is the other nations are not sleeping. So so maybe the big time will only be after Paris for these guys.
So one thing I struggle to understand is with success in junior women's events. Um, I'm not so sure about in terms of memory of under 23 medals for the women, but certainly success in junior women's events. Why German women's sweep does not have a higher level than it does? And I've seen. I think they had a four last year.
Yeah.
That I'm not sure they qualified. I don't know if they're
No,
going to try an 8 again this year or stick with the 4 or.
I think, but sweeping is the big women's sweeping is the big construction area of German rowing, and you're fully right saying that when you look at juniors, I think under 23 is a bit up and down, but I think this also shows the structural weakness in it, and shows the most currently in women's sweep rowing, and that is one that Germany is still not as superior as 10-20 years ago in junior rowing, but we're still strong. When you look at I think boats making the final plus medaling, it has been stable at a high level over the last couple of years. Under 23, similar, nothing compared to the 90s, but still at high level. And Germany does not manage to get these talents into the A level, and there are a couple of, I think, systematic reasons for that.
Okay.
One is clearly the we're not professional enough at the high performance level as other countries are.
Really?
We're not joining forces. But this is we mentioned Christian. I think this is what Christian experienced. So there, so a couple. Well, let's start with juniors. Juniors are still very, very high level. One of the problems there is a couple of them are already pushed too far, so that they're not hungry anymore once they leave the junior age. So while maybe they medal at the juniors, and then hey, that's the best you can get. So why should you really continue? While this normally I would think is just the moment when it really starts. But you see many juniors dropping out because they've reached it all. Then you have the juniors like Elias thinking, gosh, this under 23 rowing or even senior rowing is so unattractive in Germany. I'll rather go to the US. Well, I might get probably get a nice scholarship, and I go to Northeastern or to any other university, and then the German Rowing Association is no longer following them, is no longer monitoring them, is no longer having an interest in them. While again the Dutch already for ages, at least at the under 23 level, always brought them over when IRA season is over, and so then they come for the selection of the national team in June. So and this is something that Germany, I think there probably is not even a database in German rowing which has the records of all Germans actively rowing at colleges or universities in the US. That's one thing. Then the other thing is when you look at the system, what the fun factor is no longer there. So there is really the maybe too much pressure, no alternatives. Also, the interesting thing, junior rowing, maybe also under 23 rowing, is still you still have the team spirit. You're still in your club, the experience. And then you're more as an individual. You're on your own when you try to enter the senior A level. And while I take all the countries with college systems or university systems, US, UK, the Netherlands, where people start rowing at the age of 17, 18, 19, but they first experience also the fun factor, and then they're still hungry, interested, attracted enough by rowing that they continue. And in Germany, we lose too many people in between juniors and the senior A level. And then the final thing is, I think, also the maybe the quality of coaching, very generally speaking, that too little adjustment to what are the needs of the new generation. So the new generation probably needs to be
That's
addressed
interesting.
differently, needs to train differently. I think that's also what's happening. And then overall, I don't know how this is in other countries. I think there are simply less young people interested in high performance sports. So you rather do esports, and if you do anything, you play soccer. But I think the number of young Germans really engaging in high performance sports is also much lower than in the 90s. So back to the women's speed rowing, I think that this is something that clearly comes together there, and no clear plan in developing teams. For example, last year that was one of the few times the women's eight rowed at the Worlds was the under 23 eight.
Yeah.
And but also it took a while after the under 23 Worlds before the association said, okay, why don't we just send them also to the Worlds? And this is I think is something that Germany should do more. Really develop, give teams, give rowers more time to develop. Also, I think you also had in your podcast already. Remember the Italian lightweight double, and I forgot her first name. It's not Federica, but her partner.
Cesarini, Rodini, Valentina Rodini,
Yeah, Valentina. It's Valentina.
Yeah.
I think Valentina. The first time she rowed at the Olympics, she made the C final. I'm me now, but such a rower in Germany would have probably been pushed to stop rowing. The current European champion in the single scull, well, not Olli Seidler, but Lennart van Lierop. So he rowed as a lightweight rower in the under 23 Worlds, and I think he also rowed there in the B or C final. So such a rower would never have been given the time in Germany to develop. So this is also where the system currently is a bit weak.
Okay, so another question I have that I don't understand is I know once you select your top 8 rowers and you put them in Deutschland Actor, then your rowers 9 to 12 are obviously not as good. But I don't understand how this is consistently the German 4 without Coxon, straight 4, cannot produce a decent boat that can get into the final, given that sweet rowing, they're in the Deutschland Actor group. They have the sponsorship from Velo, I imagine. But what is it that stops Germany producing fast straight 4 as well as the 8? Because it is possible.
I'm laughing, Crossy, because exactly that is the question I asked Max Planer yesterday. Because it was exactly the same question. So I will now repeat the answer I got. I don't know whether it makes sense, but one of the answer was that once the 8 is selected, the 4, of course, is second best. The 4 is not immediately selected, but it always takes a time because, then there are more than 4 people competing for the 4, so they still do a few regattas, seed racing before they really find the final the final team. That apparently once in a while there are also rowers who see their own motivation dropping as soon as they are no longer in the Deutschland Achter. Also, then, I don't know whether this was a strong argument that because they don't have so much time to row together, and then I agree. And the Coxless 4 also needs time to grow together, and then you immediately race against the big Coxless 4 nations, which sometimes even have made the Coxless 4 their priority boat. and then you get beaten by a couple of lengths, and apparently you lose motivation. So this is the summary of how I understood Max yesterday. I don't know, Crossy, in all, whether this is a sufficient explanation. I rather think that maybe in the Coxless 4, it also shows that currently, well, already for a while, German sweep rowing is not broadly strong when it comes to physical capabilities, and that this maybe even, well, I don't know, but this then also starts to show, because you only have number 9 to 12 maximum in the Coxless 4. I would also argue that we talked about, Chris, that maybe it's also a technical issue, and that if you row the Coxless 4 like you're rowing the 8, that this is not the fastest way to row a Coxless 4.
Interesting.
So that might also be an issue, that either it's an issue for completely rethinking your rowing technique, or be smarter and adjust the rowing technique then to the Coxless 4. So that might also be an explanation, because I don't get it. And then we have not even talked about the Coxless pair, because somehow the 8 has always been, and even last year, but now over such a long period, strong, fast, but I don't know. The last time that Germany had a really fast men's Coxless 4 was, I think, in the early 2000s, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm going back to try and think.
There was Heidegger Stür, who then went in the 8.
I know we've been talking for an hour. I don't know if you've got a little bit of extra time.
I still got time. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, to my way of thinking, world rowing is threatened if a strong nation like Germany isn't producing fast crews, and by that I mean putting a decent women's 8 in. Yeah, I think women's 8s is a big issue without a strong German team. With Russia out of the sport at the moment, and in the event is I think under threat. But I think more than that, world rowing needs big, strong nations to be performing at the top of their game, and that means Germany. How do you see it?
Fully correct. And I think that German rowing is not aware of the position and the responsibility it has. Because I'm fully with you. If Germany was no longer really playing an important role in rowing fast, you lose such a big, strong, important nation, which will reduce the attractiveness of rowing, and then in the end it becomes something like ice skating, that only the Dutch enjoy because they win everything, but no one else is really watching it anymore. So I think that is a very good point. I think that Germany, or German rowing, has not really woken up to that reality. World rowing in general, and all these developments, the trends, the discussions, I think also needs to rethink how it can stay attractive. And then I'm not really talking about do really strange or funny things, but maybe the program has to be, again, boiled down to a few numbers. Well, being a former lightweight, I think it's still a pity that they boiled it down on the lightweight rowing, because this is where you had highly competitive fields. And but maybe if the conclusion is that actually a women's 8 is only put together in Anglo-Saxon countries anymore, I don't know. Maybe is this a boat that should no longer be part of the program? Um, will they suffer then the same destiny, like for example the men's lightweight eight suffered from?
Well,
So if you
you have to have a women's eight for gender equity, because the sport
and
unless
then
you
you bring
then
in this, yeah, correct. You're right. Yeah.
unless you have something like you go for a mixed eight, or unless you create an eight out of people that have rowed in the pair and the four, and maybe create a composite eight later on in the
But
competition.
that is maybe something that also, that really has to be made clear to German rowing if they they want to continue watching the Deutschland after, they at least need to send in a women's aid because otherwise, in terms of gender equality, there
Yeah,
there will
that,
be more cuts to the fields.
that's a really interesting issue, isn't it? You probably don't know this, but I just had a thought. Will Vila? I mean, because the German Deutschland Actor are one of the few crews that have a sponsor, or squads that it's not. Well, it's kind of a squad. It's a sweet squad that have a sponsor. Will
Yeah.
Velo continue to sponsor the Deutschland Actor going forward?
That I don't know. Well, would have to dig into that, but it's a good question. I think normally these relationships are longer standing, but which brings me to the point that there was that also German rowing is having financial issues. I think that's also a point we haven't discussed today, but financials also matter when you look at the financial means that Team GB has, the financial means that Team NL has, and Germany is now, whether there was even the news that there were some kind of expenditure stops coming from the rowing association.
Oh, really?
So there are also it would have to open up. But that's it's a bit the chicken egg question. So do you first need a sponsor to then then to
Yeah.
have competitive rowing again, or should you first have competitive rowing and then you get sponsors again? I think what I don't know how it is in other countries. I think what German rowing could do better is just bring in all these former athletes who have become, who have made some kind of professional career. And this is, the old, because like we said at the beginning, when we talked about our podcast, um, there are so many passionate rowers
Mm.
or former rowers out there, and also very often former rowers who did a decent career afterwards. So
Yeah.
try to actively bring those in order to really attract more sponsoring. But that's the whole thing. These days you need more and better sponsoring if you at least want to be successful with a couple of teams.
Yeah. How you said you're trying to be a glass half full person. So how
Yeah, today.
optimistic
Yeah.
how optimistic are you about German rowing going up to Los Angeles or Brisbane and beyond?
A lot will really depend on how German rowing and high performance rowing will position itself after Paris.
Mm.
Brigitte Bielik, the current national coach, will retire. Um, there is also, we have the kind of managing director of high performance sport that had also been, or there has been quite some criticism about his functioning. So it would be time for some new fresh wind, for renewal. Well, for the position of national coach, there has to be someone new because
Mm.
Brigitte Bielik, I don't think that she will continue from retirement. Um, and this will really have, and this will be conditional to my forecast for LA or Brisbane, because it will then really depend. Will we see the changes now that we touched upon today? Will we see really innovation coming in?
Mm.
Is the system, and the system is everyone, is the clubs, the rowers, the local coaches. So are they really willing to compromise for a higher goal? And the higher goal is to really produce more top quality, fast rowing German crews. If this is the case, and this could be the case, if you appoint the right persons, then I think Germany is still a rowing country, is a rowing nation. Then we could also see already in LA, but definitely in Brisbane, a nice glass half full story, a really nice performing German team. If we continue, that's all. If we
Mm.
continue doing things like we have been over the last 10, 15 years, then I think we would all have to keep our fingers crossed that Olli Seidler will continue rowing for another 8 years, because otherwise there is very little hope of a high performing German team. Then I
Yeah.
would rather be concerned that it's going to be worse than what we're seeing currently.
Yeah, I think Ollie. I think he wants to because he's doing Henley incredibly, which is just before the Olympics. But I think I don't know this. I'm guessing he wants to be the first man who's won 7 diamond sculls at Henley. And I don't know what has he
Nice.
won,
Yeah.
3 or 4 at the moment. I don't know, but he's doing Henley this year. And yeah, good luck to him. Really, I wanted to ask you maybe finally, although and this is to do with the past, Carsten, not the future. That the news came through about 2 weeks ago, or maybe 3, about the Thomas Bach accepted the argument that the results of the GDR, the East German team, from the 76 games, the 80 games, and the 88 games should be rubbed for the letterbooks, and medals redistributed, is what I saw. I don't know if you're aware of that. I was kind of going to ask, what do people in Germany think of that? Because is there any love lost, or fondness for the GDR and its achievements, or and what's your personal view about that?
I haven't seen that one. I'll also need to
Us,
dig into that one. I'll send it
us,
over after. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, listen. So I also haven't seen that this is a big story in Germany currently.
Mm,
Um, I would really say, when we 76, 80, 84. Well, not 84, 84, there were no
they weren't there.
GDR
Yeah.
crews in LA. Um, I must say this is it is a bit pathetic. In all honesty,
Mm,
this is really the distant past. If there had been any doping, well, I know either they found out back then or later, but you don't start scrubbing these results really almost 40, 50 years later. But I think this is also a bit showing disrespect to the athletes from back then, because this is like, this is a kind of group. It's a group verdict. It's assuming that really everyone was highly doped, and was completely illegally rowing. In our podcast, we also talk to former GDR rowers. That's also the nice thing about the podcast, because
oh, really? Who were they?
we had Rüdiger Reiche
Oh, Rudy
in
Riker.
our
Yeah.
podcast already. We had Hartmut Buschbacher in
Bushbacker.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also had now recently one where who actually escaped or fled from the GDR team to West Germany after a rowing regatta in Bled.
Oh, that's Matthias, was it?
It's
Matthias
Matthias Schumann, exactly.
Schumann.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so and I must say, and that's also the nice thing about the podcast, because so my co-host Zappel is born in East Germany. I'm born in West Germany,
Yeah.
and I really, these stories. So there, you cannot really do a kind of across the board verdict about any athlete 40, 50 years ago. So therefore, I would really say now leave.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
past be the past, and I would rather think that's not very politically incorrect. Rather than scrubbing results from GDR rowers from back then, rather rethink how you're dealing with Russian athletes at the
Yeah.
Paris Olympics.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Carsten, I'm just thinking now, is there anything that you would have liked to have said or covered that we need to talk about?
No, we covered everything. I'll do self-promotion for 10 seconds because we haven't
Yeah.
mentioned the title of our podcast,
Oh, no,
Crossy.
go for it. What is it?
Yeah, so it's Schubschlag, a very German word.
Yeah.
And of course, to all these millions viewers, yeah, and the regular viewers of Crossy's Corner, if you well, we can even record our podcasts in English. We prefer German, but we can do English.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you have a good story, if you know of a good story, you will find out how to reach us. But just drop us a message, and we'll make you famous in Germany.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So, Carsten, it's been fantastic to try and unwrap German rowing. I'm very excited to see the German team in Varese at World Cup 1. I'm very excited to see Ollie Zeidler race through this season and in Paris. And yeah, fingers crossed that that there's a gold medal for you in the end.
I'll hope so as well. And many thanks for the invitation, Crossy.
So we'll end the live part of this interview now. Thanks everyone for watching and listening, and thanks, Carsten.
Thank you.